This episode is about minutes 76 through 80 of Solo, a Star Wars story, featuring returning guest Riley Silverman. Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Chrysanthi Tan, you can call me Xanthi, and today is all about minutes 76 through 80 of Solo, a Star Wars story. We are getting into the Droid Rebellion, and this set of minutes starts with L3 saying, I don't know, free your brothers and sisters or something, and ends with Lando getting cut off while trying to record an installment of the Calrissian Chronicles. I'm so excited to have back to the show Riley Silverman, who is now officially, publicly a Star Wars author.
Yes, it was a thing that I couldn't talk about last time I was on the show. And it was like, I remember you were emailing me about the show, and I was like, I have to see if I'm allowed to do it. And then I was hoping by the time I did it that they would like let me talk about it. And then they didn't. So I had to like keep it quiet back then still too. But I was like, I still want to do the show. I don't want to wait months and months to do it. So.
And now you have a book about Tatooine.
I do. I have a book about Tatooine.
Pre-order it now.
Please do. Exploring Tatooine, illustrated guide.
Yes. And I bet Alex from Star Wars Minute is gonna be all over that immediately. We know he loves his illustrated guides, his visual guides.
Yeah. I hope he is. I hope he is, and he talks about it on the show, and they sell more copies of it. So
I hope we go back to Tatooine a little bit more in Star Wars.
It would be nice, yeah. This is not a Tatooine at all 5 minutes, so you found 5 of the minutes that don't have Tatooine in them.
Yeah.
It's a shame because I actually do have a lot to say about Tatooine, obviously, because I wrote a book about it, but also about its usage and story, and why I think that I get that it's like fun to dunk on it because it's used a lot, but I actually do think it like story grows from story. So I think the reason why a lot of stuff happens on Tatooine is because a lot of stuff already happened on Tatooine. And so the one I think is the wildest is, and we'll move on to your actual show's topic in a second, but whenever someone's like about Book of Boba Fett especially, and also like the beginnings of Kenobi, I'm like, where else did you think this story was going to happen? Like if you're picking up from Boba Fett after Return of the Jedi, I got news for you. That's where he was at. Like that, he can't go a lot of places when he's inside Sarlacc. Like, so sorry. And same thing with Kenobi. It's like, in fact, it's actually wild that we're leaving Tatooine in Kenobi because, according to lore, he never left Tatooine. So it's actually a wild thing that he's not going to be on Tatooine. So
yeah.
Yes, Anakin was on Tatooine because that's why they put Luke on there, because it was the one planet that Anakin would never willingly go back to. It's all for reasons, people. It's all connected. It's like all these movies are set in the same universe and have intertwining storylines. Yeah, so it's very fun. But I literally, a friend of mine on my Facebook page, when I like posted that this book was coming out, was like, his only response was to ask me why, when there's so many planets, they only ever go to Tatooine. I'm like, well, first of all, they don't. There's lots of planets they go to. Second of all, I'm not going to respond to this message on the day that I'm announcing my book coming out. Like, really? Anyway.
Oh my gosh. That's a lot.
Yeah. Now that that's out of my system, let's talk about Solo, a Star Wars story.
Well, speaking of like recurring things and story building from story, I'm trying to find a way to connect it to this, but the truth of the matter is, like what you said connects to everything. So it connects to everything. So I don't even need to try too hard to do that. So here we have, there are music. Okay, there's actually a really interesting musical thing that's happening here that like a sort of a recursive type of thing. And when I start playing from the minutes, we'll hear it. But I just want to put it out in the open because I listened to your appearance on Star Wars Minute earlier on their Solo season, and you kind of, I remember you mentioning, I wrote a couple notes down. You didn't have L3 minutes for them, but you had said that you kind of wished that you had L3 minutes in a way because you thought something about her and like droids were fascinating, and you mentioned that you have a droid theory. A theory of droids in Star Wars.
I do. I have a theory of droids in Star Wars, which is that I think that droid personalities grow out of essentially how much longer it's been since they were originally programmed, or how counter they are running to their programming, or essentially like basically like the more files, the more data, the more things they've processed, the more their personalities will grow out of that, which is kind of like what most living things do. You develop your personality based on the experiences you have in your life. And that's, but I think that like L3 is extremely rebellious because she has been rebuilding herself so much over time that she has this completely like cobbled together self-made personality. I think that like K2SO is so rebellious because his programming is constantly running counter to what it's supposed to be, and so that's why he has that like bickering, argumentative kind of response, and the kind of the sarcasm in response to things with Cassian and things like that. And I think that similarly, like R2, who has never been wiped, essentially, that's why R2 is so persnickety and wild, because he's never had any, like, all these things that are building up are staying there. Whereas I think 3PO is maybe the droid in Star Wars that is most exactly like he was originally programmed to be. And that's why when he's wiped in Rise of Skywalker, there's no change to his personality. He just forgot things. And I think that's because 3PO is the most exactly what he was made to be doing. And like, he's often never being like, there's that meme on the internet of like, 3PO works great, you just keep putting him places he's not designed to be in. And I think that he never adapted to any of that stuff. He just stays 3PO the whole time. So when he's wiped, he stays exactly the same. That's my theory about droids. Is like every droid's personality seems like perfectly suited to the things that have been altered or changed about them over time. So R2 is a spy droid, essentially, especially during the era after the prequels. You know, I think in the prequels, he's more just curious and exploratory, and he's Anakin's droid after they get married. So he has a lot of that same personality and that headstrongness that Anakin has. And then he becomes a spy for the rebellion. So that's why during the original trilogy, he's kind of cunning and he's kind of secretive and he lies. He like, you know, if you take the prequels to be like, if you imagine a world where where the original trilogy was written with the prequels in mind, which it wasn't, but if you have to imagine a through line, R2 is lying to Luke constantly. Like, R2 is lying to Luke about Obi-Wan, he's lying to Luke about Yoda. Like, he knows who Yoda is, he knows who Obi-Wan is, he knows he was never owned by Obi-Wan, but he has a mission and he's a spy, so he's deceptive the entire time because he's a spy robot. So
these are all true. I mean, well, I think it makes sense that 3PO doesn't change as much because he is perhaps not programmed to even learn those things, like learn the types of things that like R2 learns. So in A New Hope season, I had one of the guests, Aiden Feldkamp, who's like an opera, like a librettist and robots enthusiast, who has a couple robots himself, including one that's like 20 years old or something, like a really, really old robot. He was saying that like robots, their personalities get quirkier the older they get, for sure. Like,
yeah.
And that just completely, I feel like that is just R2. That's R2.
And 3PO got mind wiped at the end of the prequels, so he kind of gets reset back to what his personality was when you first meet him, and then he gets mind wiped again in the sequels. So he's someone who has a little bit fresher of a cycle each time because his memory's never kept. I'm still to this day shocked that the one thing that I thought they would do in the last movie that they didn't do is I thought that when R2 restored 3PO's memory at the end of Rise of Skywalker, I thought there was going to be a joke where he was going to say, I was built by Anakin Skywalker. Like, it was going to be like, he suddenly had all his memories back, as if R2 had actually been storing all his old memories too. And that's what I thought it was going to be, this hilarious moment of him getting, the second his memory got erased, because they'd already said R2 has memory storage or whatever, I was like, oh, it's going to be hilarious. When 3PO gets his memory back, he's going to remember being built by Anakin and going to remember all the prequels and stuff like that. And then they didn't do it. So like, all right, the one thing that I thought had a bell on it, they didn't do. So
well, so that's a good warm up to start listening to the beginning of these minutes, because I think L3 is like the major star of the show in this set of minutes. So
yeah, I love that the minute literally begins with her comment. Like, I don't know what to say for it. And I know we're talking more about not dialogue in these, but there is just...
No, I want to talk about dialogue too.
I just love how her react. I mean, obviously she's already revolutionary prior to these scene. Like she already has a lot of thoughts about like droid emancipation and stuff like that. But I like that even in the span of these 5 minutes, she goes from it being like, I don't know, do this, like get out of my way, leave me alone, to this is the greatest thing I've ever done in my life, and I'm so glad we did this, and I'm leading the revolution. And it's just so fun how she does it as an afterthought. She starts this revolution, but then once she sees it's happening, she's like, wait, this is what I want. This is the greatest thing ever. So
yeah, yep. So we are about to hear that very moment, starting right now.
I don't know. Free your brothers and sisters or something. Just give me some space. I'm in.
Han, can you hear me?
Kind of need to know which way to go here.
L3?
The thermal vault is down 2 levels, then left, then right, then it's a 3rd left.
Right. It's a lot of directions, but we're on it.
So there's a lot of movement happening. Oh my gosh, I love hearing all the different droid sounds.
They're in subsector 4, coming up on gate
it's like
X371K.
a whole cacophony of stuff happening here.
Yeah. Okay, let's pause there.
I like how the music is not didactic, but it almost operates as if it was didactic, because depending on like what section of the story you're in, it's louder or quieter, and it really does feel like it's broadcasting from the room where L7 is. And so when you get to anybody else's air, like it's a little bit quieter when it's Han, it's a little bit quieter when it's Kira with Beckett, but when it's on L7, it does feel like it's coming from that room. And even later, we'll talk about it more when we get to where Lando is, but there's no music at first with Lando, and then it cuts back to music coming in. But
can you describe what you mean by didactic?
Maybe I'm using the wrong word. Isn't didactic the music that's actually happening on, like it's actually coming from a source on screen?
Oh, you mean diegetic?
Diegetic. Sorry. Yes. Thank you.
No, it's okay, because it does kind of sound didactic too.
What does didactic
possibly
mean? Then? I might have been using it wrong a lot of times in my life, so I like to know now what I've been saying.
Well, I always think when I hear of didactic, I tend to think it means like, I think of people who are like explaining something in like not necessarily an overly explanatory way, but like in a kind of bossy is what I'm thinking of.
Oh, maybe I'm didactic then. Okay. Yeah, diegetic is what I meant, and I'm glad that you asked me it, and that I know that I'm wrong. I'm glad that you said it before I said it over and over again for the next 4 minutes of discussion.
I think didactic also has like an element of like being really prescriptive, and I think that's maybe what I like. Here's what you need to do. These are the steps. Like this is how I think it should be.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I
don't think the music's doing that in this scene. Yeah, but it is. I feel like it feels like it's almost like certain movies where someone will put on classical music while they're doing some sort of weird like I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head where like a villain will put on classical music and then you see them like doing
like
stuff.
Hannibal.
Like, yeah, exactly. It almost feels like L7 has put on music while she's working to focus herself, and is like conducting this mass outbreak while she's doing other stuff. But it's just score. It's not diegetic. It's just, but I do feel like it feels like it's originating from where she's at, and then it's like it's spreading throughout the halls as you go. But
oh my gosh, it's almost as if you like read my mind, but also like, okay, so what's happening here? Like, I think you're picking up on something on how this part of the score sounds like it's in a different style, perhaps, than most of the rest of the score. Kind of like sometimes music in Star Wars scores, at least, has like a diegetic vibe, a source music vibe, just because it sounds different than what you would expect. And in this case, it sounds really like even more anachronistic than film scores sometimes do. This feels like it is recalling like a Baroque era, almost a fugue or something. And I wrote down some definitions because I was like, I knew that it would make more sense to read a few things than to try to just describe them with like humming. So the first thing I want to point out is like there is a lot of repetition. Like the way that this starts out, this track in general, like this, we're in the Mind Mission. On the Deluxe, it's called Extra Deluxe Mind Mission. And the way it starts in general is, like, I'll tell you where this bass line starts coming in. You'll hear it in a second. Here. And so this is going to repeat, and then the next voice will come in. And see, do you hear how those two voices are happening at the same time? That's called counterpoint. Okay. So that's called counterpoint. It's when there's more than one voice, and they're like harmonically, they're interdependent, but they're operating independently. So it's different from like, if I were to just sing something and then just like have chords underneath, because that's not like operating as an independent like melody. But when there's it's basically like interlocking. It's kind of like a puzzle almost. It's like interlocking melodies that weave together, and they form harmonies. They form harmonies, so to speak, in that like if you were to pause it at any point and take a cross section of what all the notes are in the different voices, you could say like, oh, okay, that's a, E flat, that's a C, that's a G. Oh, okay, so here is where it's going to be a C minor chord. But the chords aren't the like main focus of this sort of composition style. The main focus is coming up with those independent voices that can also work interdependently. In fact, contrapuntal writing and like fugues and stuff like that are often assigned in school like as assignments to composers. They're not, they describe a process of writing. It's not necessarily like a fixed form that people do like sonnets or something. Like it can be sometimes, but also it is like very instructional and like educational to just figure out how to do that. It's not very common to do it. It has come and gone in different eras in popularity. But anyway, that's counterpoint.
Is it related to like in musicals when you'll have like a big like maybe like an act break number, and you have like every character has like their particular like the best example I can think of is Les Mis and One Day More, where everybody kind of has their different commentary that's happening, and it's not all to the same tune. Like the Thenardiers are like, watch them run amok, catch them as they fall, never know your luck when there's a free for all. And like while they're doing that,
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. I think that makes sense to me now. I mean, it made sense when you were describing it, but I was applying it to a thing that I'm already more familiar with. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it like using, and so like probably the most basic form of the most basic way that most of us are used to participating in counterpoint is like singing around. Okay. So in that case, everyone is singing the same thing, but just at different times, but just the way that it works, it still sounds nice somehow. It still fits together. And so like a canon would be like that too, like row, row, row your boat or whatever. Okay. And so that's what's happening right now. And more so than just counterpoint, like there is also, I guess as a verb, fuguing, like to write in this contrapuntal style, you can take it a step further and do something in the style of like a fugue or like an invention, which if you grew up playing piano and ever played like Bach inventions or something, I'm sure there are some listeners who like might have memories of being like, oh yeah, I played invention number or whatever. I should have practiced that before whipping out an example. But like,
I mean, you were kind of riffing. I think we were if you had practiced it. Like, wow, you really got deep into this. Like you were ready to go.
Yeah. So you will hear like one voice come in, and then you'll hear an imitation, and that's what it's called, and that's like really part of the style. So imitation, I'm reading this now. Imitation is the repetition of a melody shortly after its first appearance in a different voice. So like you might hear, we hear it in Mind Mission. You hear like one instrument will do something. Here, let's just play it. So here's the trumpet. And now the strings are doing it in a different key. Or now the flute's like taking it. Now like the trumpet's taking it again. See, they're all kind of like swapping.
So good.
yeah, it's like really awesome weaving. Yeah, so like, yeah, it's good stuff. I love it. It's really good.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's really like, this is the kind of music that a lot of people anecdotally will say is like intellectually stimulating. Not that it's smart music, but just like it. I've heard on more than one occasion from like engineers who say they like to code listening to the Bach's well-tempered clavier, which is fugues, and specifically not just like general classical music, but like fugues in general, like because there's like a repetitiveness to them. There's not too much newness, but things kind of like fit together in a way that kind of makes you go like, oh, it's over there, and now I recognize it over there, and now I recognize it over there, and it's all.
Oh, that makes actually a lot of sense, because whenever I write, I typically can't write to songs that have lyrics, because the lyrics will distract me from the writing, and like I can't keep my thoughts straight because of the lyrics. But I will listen to film scores a lot, because I feel like film scores actually demand you pay attention. And so it is a thing where like if I put it on, in fact, like when I wrote my book Exploring Tatooine, an illustrated guide for Star Wars, I made a playlist of all of the John Williams music that was set on Tatooine. Like I took all the Tatooine stuff.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, and I had like
You should post that playlist.
I think I have, but I will.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll share
Okay.
it. Yeah. When you share this episode, I will reply with my playlist.
Sounds good.
I think I also tossed in like maybe like a Mandalorian track from when they went to Tatooine. I can't remember, but yeah, I basically had stuff from all through the 3 trilogies, and yeah, because I was thinking about that today, because I don't know, I meant to go listen to it, and I forgot to after listening to this clip, because I did feel like, and it might be 100% like a placebo effect in my brain, like my brain's going like, yeah, you think this sounds like this, so you're saying it does. And if I listen to it, it might not sound anything like it at all. But it reminded me of the droid auction music in Star Wars, which maybe it doesn't sound like it at all, but for some reason my head like clicked to it. And I don't know if they were intentionally trying to mimic that in any way, shape, or form, or just something that my brain is like, you've heard that piece of music so much in the last year that you always hear it somewhere. I don't know, but
That's so interesting. That's cool. So the reason I like a fugue or I don't think this is technically a fugue, but it doesn't really matter. The reason I like this type of contrapuntal, like imitative style of writing for this section in particular is because there are so many concurrent threads happening, and we have so many people, like they're all in the same place, like our heroes, so to speak. Everything's happening in the same location, and it makes sense that like it sounds like there's like different rooms of it happening, but like it all still is fitting. It's still all together. Like you said, it's almost like L3 is kind of conducting it, but they all still have their own little part. And I think it's, yeah, I just think it's really good. I think it's really good.
It's a really solid piece of music. Yeah.
It's definitely.
It's funny. I realized I was like racking my brain earlier to think of an example of that kind of layered like sound, and I was like, Les Mis, and then I realized like literally Bruno from
that's
Encanto
true.
was that, because I remember that's why a lot of people were really drawn to that song, was it felt so much more complicated than your typical Disney like number typically would be. So
that's true. I think also March of the Resistance is sort of that came before this. Yeah, that came before this. So March of the Resistance, like by John Williams, does this too. And which I like as well. But more so than liking it, I think it just like the steadiness of it, the instruments being used, that snare drum is like kind of keeping things on track. Like it has almost like a not necessarily militaristic aspect to it. But there is something that is like, I mean, mission oriented. Like, I don't know, maybe something's lightly military too.
I think that maybe the military might be a little bit there, because it is essentially an armed rebellion. So there is of some level of like armed insurrection, which is, you're fighting on behalf of your freedom. So, I mean, the droids get pretty violent as this goes on. So,
yeah, that's true. So let's continue listening.
Yeah.
All right. We were about
Freedom.
I love that so much.
Oh, so many good droid sounds.
What the hell are you guys doing up there?
I created a distraction!
Oh my gosh. I love all those little freedom.
Yeah, it's such a good. It's like there's like no commit. Like it's so non-committal. Like it's not. It's like there's no. It's such a perfect delivery of that line.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna put for people watching on YouTube. I'm gonna put a little visual of this span of minutes so you can see where we are. So you can see I have like 3 stills from this part of the film, and they might be out of order, but. You see like a little TV screen on the left with, you could see like the insurrection happening, or you see the rebellion through the TV screen, through the control room. And yeah, I actually think like visually it's hard for me to, I appreciate the visuals more when I'm like pausing on certain parts and realizing, oh, this frame is actually nice, or like, oh, this is framed really nicely. Yeah. Okay, so something else about what we just heard that I wanted to mention with regard to the Mind Mission track, or Mind Mission track, is I think also the intricacy of the track makes this scene go down easier for me personally. And it is a track that not necessarily demands attention, but I'm not trying to say that this is a montage effect that's happening, but it's almost like the track is independent from what we're seeing on screen, if that makes sense. Like it seems like they could have cut it a few different ways. Like it doesn't seem like that specific to, it's not Mickey Mouse, for example. It's not like super, the track is playing and we're watching a lot of stuff happen and it kind of goes from one thing to another. And I don't think it's like extremely specific.
It's not like choreographed to the music like some other things could be.
Yeah, it's more like this is the dance number. This is the dance number is the droid uprising. So let's put this on and do that. Yeah. And I think that makes it more fun. I think for me though, I have trouble paying attention to like the minutia of action, the minutia of like watching things like this, all this hullabaloo go down. So having it like, I don't know, I feel like the music expresses what I need to feel from the action of the scene. So it kind of like emotionally gets me there, because otherwise just left to my eyes, I don't know if I would interpret how I would interpret everything going on. I mean, just imagine this without music.
Yeah, I as someone who I'm a little better. I go back and forth on being able to follow action and action scenes, but this one especially, it's so frenetic. There's so much happening, and it's cutting back and forth so fast. It's so frantic that I think it'll be really hard to follow it. I think the music makes you feel like you're weaving in and out of stuff, and it kind of makes you feel a little better about either missing stuff, or it kind of like makes you go like, I feel like I get all that's happening here. So
yeah, and I think the music helps me understand L3 better, and how this is like an empowering mission for her. Yeah. Like it's not somber, and it's also not super, super dark in like an Palpatine or like a Vader sort of way. It's resolute. And I feel that way about like March of the Resistance in general too, which I think is just a very interesting theme, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But also it is a little bit interesting because it kind of sounds dark for like kind of a rebellish theme, doesn't it? But anyway,
dark times.
Yeah. Okay, so let's continue listening.
Come on, this way. Wait, what are you doing?
So now Chewie is parting.
We gotta get the Coaxium. Hey, remember what Beckett said? Stick to the plan. Chewie.
So now we hear Han and Chewie theme.
Fine.
Actually, that was the gang theme. I get them mixed up.
Chewie. Here, you might need this.
It's nice how it just,
Hope I see you around sometime.
see now here, it's going to transition back out. See, now we're back to the Droid Rebellion. But that little like oasis of this, friendship, we're seeing these friends have having their moment. And we see Han showing that he can let go if he needs to. Yeah. What do you think of it? What do you think of this part?
I think the thing you said about it cutting away from my mission and then back to my mission, I think really works well with what's happening too, because this is a moment where Chewie is going off mission. Like Chewie is distracted by watching these other Wookiees getting, prodded and zapped, and Han is like saying, we have to stay on mission, we have to do the task, we have to stay on our goals. And then Hanness kicks in and he realizes that like he said he has to let go of it, and he's like realizes the right thing to do is to let Chewie go take care of his people. And then once Chewie goes off and does that, and then Han is going back into the mission on his own, the mission song starts up again. So it's a deviation from the mission, both in the music and in the dialogue and in like the actions of the scene. So I think it really works. It really weaves well together as it's happening.
Yeah, I like what you said about like how literally Chewie is going off mission. So it makes sense that the track would kind of cut away there. And actually what it sounds like to me is like the track has never stopped. And that's the feeling I get when we jump back into it, is like it doesn't sound like it's restarting, or like it doesn't sound like a cue ended and a new cue began. It's just like it never stopped going. The droid rebellion, the mine mission has been going all along. And I kind of like, I like how it is persistent. It reminds me also just like of in real life when there's like efforts going on, there's people who are organizing, people are fighting against stuff, but like individuals may take a break or may like step out of the battle for a while, but then jump back in and realize like, oh my gosh, this whole thing has never stopped. It's not like it feels like my life has done something different for like a brief period, but yeah, this whole thing has just concurrently still been happening. It's still here. Yeah.
And the way that they kind of seamlessly formed, like the way one fades into the other and fades back into the other one, it really kind of makes you realize like, oh, all these things that are happening are separate things, but they are also connected. They're all part of the same event that's happening. They're not all isolated incidents that are happening. It's all part of this collective chaos that this group has started by coming to this mine.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take that a step further and say that like the way that it slips into it is really subtle. And I think the way that we slip back into, the way that we slip into the Han and Chewie moment feels really subtle. And then I feel like the way that we jump back into the mine mission is subtle, but also prepared, because it's not like fading in. It's not like the knob, we turn the fader down and we've turned one fader up, but it sounds like there is a springboard moment, and where the music takes the point of view of Han springing back into, the next thing. And so I'll rewind a little bit, but you hear, I'll point out.
Hope I see you around sometime.
So here it's starting to ramp up a little bit, and then we're back in.
If I didn't already know these were two different pieces of music, like you could have convinced me that this was one piece of music and that was a bridge. Like you could have easily, like, because one rises and then it like rises up and it meets the mine mission. So it's almost like they hit the exact same note at the same time, and then one drips off again, the other one continues onward from there. And it's such a solid piece of like composition to put those two, like layer those two, and then this one like becomes the dominant one again.
Yeah. I mean, it's all written out to be like that. And so it's like an analog. I feel like composers often do like, this is like an analog version of getting the effect of what we were just talking about. So it's a very placed, intentional way of moving in and out of different themes. So Han springs back into it, and it springs back like as if it never stopped. However, it is like in a different key. So it does feel like progress has still been made. We're not like, we're just repeating from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So somehow it's developed, but also it's the same. So, okay, here we are.
Han, where are you?
I'm on my way to the vault. I lost Chewie.
He's dead?
And so we're
No,
still...
he had something he had to do.
Is he coming back?
I don't know.
Okay, they're on to us now.
I'm at the vault.
Okay, so now something different is kind of happening. But even then, when it started to slow down, you could still really subtly hear the same underlying rhythm. It was just softer. But
It feels like this is a moment in the story where they're focusing on the task a little bit more because they're having this conversation of like, this is Chewie's not here right now. I'm at the vault. I have things to do, like Han, check in. And I feel like that's why the music gets a little bit more focused because, hey, we're having a focused conversation. As focused as we can be while we're invading this spice mine, but I do feel like that is what's happening there with that music. It's like it's underlining like, okay, we're having a meeting, essentially a Zoom meeting, but we're having a meeting over comms, and so let's everyone focus now on this conversation, then we'll come back to some more broader stuff again.
yeah, this has like come up a few times in various episodes, but there is intuitively, or I'll ask you if you feel this. Do you intuitively feel a sense of like the music fits the size of the room, sort of? So like the bigger the scope, the like bigger it can be, and sort of the smaller and more intimate, the smaller it needs to be, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it always
For
does.
sure.
Like there are times where I hear music that I'm like, wow, this music is really epic in scale compared to what's actually happening here, which can then make all the emotions in the scene seem way more heightened than they would have been without it. The reference that I've been using a lot lately with that is the TV series Gentleman Jack that's on HBO uses these very, very intense string compositions. But at the end of the day, it's just like a wealthy landowner in the 1800s, like going to meetings about business and trying to marry a woman. And like, that's basically what her life is like. But it plays like every time she leaves her house, she's going to fight a duel, right? And I think it's on purpose. I think it's supposed to be like this woman is facing battle against the entire world everywhere she goes. But it's just, it's wild how much just that intensity of music makes everything feel like the stakes are way higher than they actually are. So I think maybe by talking that out, I came back around to agreeing with you, and that like the stakes are higher than they would have been if it was a male protagonist on that show living a hetero life, as opposed to this like secretly gay woman in the 1800s. Like for her, it is going to battle, and so the music has to hit that room. So that was a long-winded way of saying yes, I agree with you, and here's why. No more notes.
Well, that reminds me of like, since you brought up a completely different show, and so obviously what we're talking about, like each show would ideally have its own sense of internal logic in terms of its the way it deploys like stylistic elements, musical elements. So at least in this film, or in Star Wars, at least in Star Wars films in general, like I think this principle tends to apply from what
I think you're right with Star Wars for sure. Yeah.
And I think one aspect, because it's easy, I said one aspect of film scoring that can be overlooked sometimes is the overall arc, like sort of the things that one would not notice unless doing like a huge study and looking at statistics of, because our memory and what we can perceive is kind of limited to like a pretty short time frame, or piece by piece, or 5 minutes at a time or something. But being able to see the long arc and get to know like the composers, or the sound team's sense of internal logic, and it kind of unlocks like different ways of understanding understanding the thing. And it can also be when things are not consistent in that way, it can also be something that I think subconsciously tips us off into like something's wrong. Like, why does this feel a little bit amateur? And it will not be necessarily because that musical cue is a crappy piece of music. It might just be like the tone of this musical cue doesn't feel like it's being made with awareness of the way that cues like this tend to be used in the show. And that sort of consistency is one of the things that I think for me on a musical level comes up for me more in the TV shows, where it's not even that I think the music is bad. Like if I listen to the soundtrack, I will have no problem with it. I will think it's like, I'll think it's fun. Like I have fun listening to it. And then sometimes in certain episodes when I feel like the music is like, is it scored by a different person? Like sometimes I'm like, was this that like starts to throw me off tonally.
I definitely feel like with Star Wars especially, I feel like even this movie and Rogue One, which were not done by John Williams, still feel like they're in that John Williams like aesthetic style. I think like they were clearly given instructions to make it sound in the same frame of music as a John Williams score would. Whereas similar to how the visuals of the Star Wars movie are like, here's our visual Bible of what our aesthetics look like in this universe. So you have to like work within that. And if you suddenly had Star Wars stuff that like when you go to Camino, and Camino is so white and sterile and looks like an Apple store, or looks like something you would see in like the Abrams era Star Trek, it feels very alien and weird, but it's kind of supposed to. Whereas I feel like the TV shows, especially Mandalorian, really doesn't ascribe to that same Williams-esque score. Mandalorian has a very, very different sound to the music, and I think that's why like we're so used to Star Wars visuals having this kind of sound and vibe to them that it can be very jarring at times to have that very, very different, that like spaghetti western-esque style composition instead.
I think Mandalorian is actually kind of consistent. I consider Mandalorian like in its own, like I'm not judging Mandalorian, or I'm not expecting Mandalorian to be consistent to the way Williams scores Star Wars, but I mean like within its own world. So like each show,
its own world,
for me, each show I will kind of consider it as its own work. And I think even within like the non-Williams, non-Powell shows, some of them feel like they make more sense musically than other, but also TV is a whole other beast because it's like often season by season. You don't know how long of an arc you're trying to prepare for. It's
true.
Kind of like, all this stuff.
Yeah.
It all affects everything. So here, they're in their focus mode and we're about to get out of it. So I'll just play that. Okay.
Bolt.
Really meandering flute.
That's what I said.
There we go.
Impressive.
So the music kind of is like the final gotcha.
Yeah, we got to our destination. We got where we needed to go. There's one last challenge. We're going to take it down, and now we have done that.
Yes. And it does a little dramatic pause there. You think it's going to go, but it goes, yeah. Let's get that one more time. It gets me sometimes. Like just now, I forgot to wait.
That's what I said.
There you go.
That was impressive.
Yeah. And that's the end. I believe that's the end of the mine mission track. Oh, wait, no, is it? Yeah, I think that's the end of the mine mission track. I don't know how familiar you are with the regular versus the deluxe edition of this solo soundtrack.
I'm not.
But the original, or in the version of the soundtrack that first came out, this is separated into two tracks. One of them is called Mine Mission and one of them is called Breakout. And we're about to get to Breakout. But on the deluxe version of the soundtrack, they're combined into one track. So it's just called Extra Deluxe Mine Mission.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So 4M30B to 5M30C to something else. It's a very long title because it's the Q numbers. Okay, so now we're moving on to
We're clear.
So I love this. The music completely changes here.
Okay, Han, each canister should be equipped with a thermal display.
Yeah, I see it.
If the internal temperature reaches below 35 standard, then the coaxium will destabilize and explode.
Yep. I get it, guys. It's dangerous.
There's a pulse.
Okay, got it.
Great. Only 11 more.
11?
This repeating little cell. Okay, so that's where I'll stop. Yeah, what do you think of that music there?
I feel like it's a little bit more, like maybe a little more dire at times. Like I think there's a little bit more like the intensity has, like, it's weird because the music is definitely less intense than the previous music because the previous music was like getting to this like peak at a point, but I feel like it doesn't have that same like kind of chaotic like as the other one did, where it doesn't have that same so much is happening all at one time. Now it's very much like this thing you are doing is very dangerous and you really need to focus on just this task right now, and so the music really kind of like beds that instead of anything else is happening right now.
I think that's interesting. I think so it is less intense. It's, it's not as fast, it's not as loud, there's not as many voices, it's smaller in every way. But it is almost more tense.
Yeah,
like,
the tension is higher, yeah.
Yeah. It's more like tightrope walking. Where it's just
perfect way to describe it. Yeah, it's very much like threading a needle. Yeah.
Yeah, like it feels like it has to be so precise that you can't even get the whole like orchestra in. You just like need to have that one person do that. Like it's doing basically what Han is doing. You just need to have that one person handle the coaxium and just all be there, so like kind of trembling, like.
Really,
and there is like
Chewie with him at that point in time.
Yeah. And you do hear like in the strings, or you hear the ostinato, you hear the repetition, these little things that are like almost like nervous energy, kind of repeating. It's well expressed in the music, and I think the way that the strings kind of glide. I'll play it again, but like you can hear you hear like almost magical sounding things too at the same time. So it's not just like tense but only industrial sounding. It's like tense, but also we have these like I hear like sort of a celeste, and I hear sort of strings playing in like thirds or sixths and higher pitched things. And I think for me that is sort of like emphasizes the beauty of the coaxium canisters, like really, really dangerous and delicate, but like they look really pretty and like they look really, they're really dangerous, but they are glowing. They're like, yeah. So let's hear that again.
I get it, guys. It's dangerous.
Some little bells.
Okay, got it.
Great. Only 11 more.
11?
Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit more so we can hear more of the glistening.
Now what?
There we go. I'm going to go back here. There we go.
Now what?
Okay, Han,
It's almost like it's magical moment in this really tense situation.
I think you are correct about the aspect of like the coaxium being beautiful, and that's part of like it's like this very beautiful but very volatile substance that's right in front of him. I also think for me, what I'm picking up there with that, like that music there, is a little bit of I know that Han would disagree with me, but a little bit of the Force at play in that this is building towards a pretty big moment for Han, destiny-wise. It's building towards we're getting to the Kessel Run. We're getting to this moment that like defines him. Not only the Kessel Run, but what he's going to do with his coaxium when he gets it to its location is going to utterly define the rest of his life. And it really does feel like the Force is like building up. Like your destiny is being defined today.
I love that so much. I love it so much. I have this, yeah, I totally hear the Force in there too. And a listener last year, well, I didn't answer it till a couple months ago in my A New Hope season finale wrap up, but a listener like wrote this really like long question that was basically like, these are my favorite music in Star Wars. It's like the music of when characters are like leveling up. Like when Luke realizes that Yoda is Yoda, or when Obi-Wan, like, when Rey is about to like lift the rocks, when Rey grabs the lightsaber, all these things. And so I was breaking down like what instruments are involved, sort of like what things sound like. And there is like that celeste, that sort of, this fits very well into like the forcey sounds, the Force stuff, the destiny making. And I have been thrusting this upon Han myself, even though he wouldn't agree with it. But like, I think it's fine that he wouldn't agree with it because the Force doesn't ask for permission to do its thing. Like the Force is just the Force. So he can deny it. But I feel like even at the beginning of the film, when we first hear the main theme come in, it's like when it's during the Corellia chase and like his little speeder, he like turns it and then we hear like a brief moment of the main theme. And I was trying to think of like, why is Luke's theme there? Like, why would the main theme be for that moment where he does that? And I mean, the real reason is probably just, it sounds cool. And in this film, it is used for Han too. But because I am partial to that theme being prior to this film, that theme, the main Star Wars theme was pretty much reserved just for Luke. Like we actually don't hear the Star Wars main theme in the prequels or like besides the crawls and stuff. But like, it made me think that like moments like that this is not what Han would call it, sort of the Force kind of helping edge something along, or, it's when Luke is sort of just crossing his fingers and being like, all right, let's just hope this turns out for the best. Yeah. So he can call it.
That's not how the Force works. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's like Han, and like it makes sense. And like I like this day is so definitive for Han, and I think it is coming in right now is like it's very much a Han, these are your first steps kind of moment that's happening right here.
Yeah, and totally like this. He, even though Han resists the entire way, he denies it. He doesn't want to join the rebellion. He doesn't want to do any of this stuff. Like it is happening. He is the conduit of the Force, whether he wants to or not.
Yeah, even Kira sees it, which we won't get into today. But yeah.
What? Wait.
Well, Kira has that moment which it won't be in these minutes, but when they get to where. Why I'm thinking of the name.
And where the Marauders are, where...
Yeah, why can't I think of the name of the Marauder leader?
Emphas Nest.
Yeah, Emphas Nest, thank you. My brain kept wanting to say Quinlan Voss. I'm like, it's not Quinlan Voss, that's a very different situation. Yeah, actually, isn't Quinlan Voss is the Jedi from... Never mind, I got the wrong Voss, too. I should just
Voss,
leave right
Quinlan
now.
Voss.
Yeah, it's because I was talking about Asajj and Quinlan earlier, and that's why it was in my head. So when he's like doing the deal, and Kira says to Emphas Nest, she goes, he's going to help you. Like he's the good guy. Like,
yeah, that's true.
There's that whole thing, and like Han resists over and over again. I'm not the good guy, and Kira's like, he's the good guy.
Yeah, you're so right. I forgot about that moment until just now. But yeah, that is an interesting scene there.
Yeah.
So we're moving on, and here actually.
Okay, Han, each canister should be equipped with a thermal display.
Yeah, I see it.
If the internal temperature reaches below 35 standard, then the coaxium will destabilize and explode.
Yep, I get
Get it, guys. It's dangerous. Okay, so the music's escalating in tension.
Got it.
Great, only 11 more.
11?
Now we have an octave up. All right. Now, one of
Calrissian Chronicles.
my favorite parts of the film.
Chapter 5.
So great.
Continued. Personally, I wasn't all that impressed with the Cheru. No sense of humor or style. Nonetheless, their L3 and I were deep in their sacred temple. And that's when we saw it. Always something.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. And Calrissian Chronicles would be something that I would be interested in. It reminds me of like Dr. Afra's little voice notes.
Yes. Oh my God. Speaking the language now.
Oh man, Dr. Afra and Lando. Little. I would like to see that.
I've definitely seen Lando paired up with Sana at some point, so I'm sure that he's run into Afra at some point too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that'll be part of the Calrissian show.
Yeah. I would.
What if they brought Afra live action?
I need it. I need it so badly. Although I'm afraid they'll make her live action and then they'll like downplay her queerness, and I don't want that to happen. So I love her so much. So
yeah. Oh, it's always the live action question. Live action question mark.
I do feel like TV can get away with a little bit more because they're not trying to sell as much. Like it's not as dependent on box office. Anyway, not for this, but yeah, that's my hope.
Although, like one of the big criticisms of this movie, or at least things people talk about, some people really like it, the interconnectivity, basically the way that things like slotting in. For some people, that's very pleasurable. That's very satisfying. And for some people, it's really not. And so this film and TV, I don't know. I feel like this film will, when the more things that are like built that reference it, like the more backlinks basically on this film, the better this film might be to watch. I
agree. Yeah. I'm a pretty big defender of this film. I think that it gets a bad rap, and I think that given the chaos that its production was, given the fact that it was literally the directors were fired from it, another director to like pick up the pieces of what they did and rebuild it, and that kind of stuff. The fact that it ended up being as good as it is kind of a wild miracle. And I actually think that, despite the criticism of interconnectivity, I feel like Solo is maybe one of the only Star Wars movies that is easy to watch in a single viewing. It's like basically it and A New Hope are the only two that I can think of where if you sit down and just watch them, like you're pretty much good. Like you don't need to worry about what's happening anywhere else. Whereas anything but those two movies, there's always what came right before, what's going to be happening after it, what's going on with it. So Rogue One, maybe a little bit, you could probably get away with that as well. But I think
TFA also works like that.
Yeah, probably a little bit. Yeah, I think that's fair. But I think that I'm a little sad that it didn't get more continuation. I'm glad the comics have at least brought Kira back and let her have a future story, which is nice. I do think it's kind of funny that like the big thing this week, I feel like, I don't know what Alden did to Kathleen Kennedy, but she has been like gunning for him. Like every quote has been like, well, we learned really badly you can't replace the lead. And I'm like, I don't think that's what people's issues with Solo was. Like it's such a weird thing that she's brought up like twice now in interviews. And I'm like, boy, whatever he did to her.
I only saw that one interview.
She said it in the Vanity Fair interview, and then she said it again about Indiana Jones, because she was saying that we're not going to recast Harrison Ford. Like if when he stops playing the character, we'll move on to a different character instead of like recasting that character.
Oh, interesting.
And she referenced Solo again. I'm like, all right, get it. You love Harrison Ford and you hate Alden Ehrenreich or whatever. So it was just like really funny. But
I didn't know about that second one, because based on the first one, I couldn't. The quote was so. The context of the quote was removed, that like you just had to trust the journalist presented it in reference to the correct thing. So I was like, let's not like read too much into that. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And I honestly thought he did a pretty good job as Han.
Oh yeah,
like, I was actually really impressed by how, and obviously Donald is amazing as Lando. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting quote because we're about to begin watching a new Obi-Wan series with the actor who replaced the original actor of Obi-Wan 20 years ago. And it's like, I think you can get away with it sometimes. So,
well, I still believe that unless like Kathleen Kennedy does like a whole like podcast interview about it or something where it's like where I can cross-examine her and know exactly what I want to know, then there must be something that there must be parts that I'm filling in with my own imagination.
Yeah. And that's very fair about a lot of interviews with people who were like in executive positions, especially. So
yeah. And when it comes to people talking about Alden's performance, and I think a lot of the times, because when I think about it, like I think he did a fine job too. Did I love it? Like, am I super pleased about Solo and him being in Solo and whatever? Like I'm kind of lukewarm about it. Like, but I think he did a good job, but I'm still lukewarm about it. So why is that? And I think a lot of the times when anyone criticizes something like an actor or pins it on something else, like that's we're going for the low-hanging fruit. We're not necessarily the low-hanging fruit, like the thing that we can recognize, basically, because all these other things might actually be influencing how we feel about it, but they might be working on such a subconscious level that we don't even realize it. Like one of the things that like I think, I don't remember if we talked about it on our last episode, but one of the things that I think is like, okay, so in the book of Boba Fett, when the Vespa chase was really, really slow, I think one of the you can blame this or you can blame that. You can blame these things that you see visually. But like also one of the things is the music was really fast and repetitive. So the music may have also made it seem slower. Unless you swapped out like tons of different elements and like A/B tested them to see like which ones on a like it could just be like the costumes or something about the costumes or the colors just like took you out and you just couldn't. But you didn't even notice that that's what was happening. So you just think, oh, it's the actor. It just must be Alden. And I think Alden took a lot of blame for things that fans just can't pinpoint about why something made them feel a certain way. So just go for Alden.
Yeah. And it was a movie that really felt like it had the cards stacked against it before it even came out. Like it was being predicted as being this big failure before it ever. Like there was like comments about how it already been written off as like a movie that wasn't gonna. Like they already were kind of already shutting down their plans to make these like story films and stuff like that. I think weirdly, I do think that Alden being the wrong choice is the wrong lesson to have learned from why this movie didn't work. But I also am glad that's the lesson they got from it, because the thing that I would want them to do the least is to start remaking like Luke and Leia stories without like Mark and Carrie as Luke and Leia. I ultimately in my heart of hearts, what I want them to do with Star Wars is to go to a different era and like either go in the future or go in the past and tell stories that are not so connected to the only set of stories we've had movies about so far. Like that's what I would love to see more of. Which is why I respond so well to the High Republic books, because I'm like, here's a whole other era, a whole other characters I can fall for and whatever, and they aren't stuck to the legacy of what's already happened. So go to the future where we're no longer dealing with the direct aftermath of the Empire. Like, give me something else. Like, it can be some like distant aftermath of it. Fine. Like another generation's dealing with the same issues. Fine. So whatever pushes them more and more towards that, I'm okay with, versus constantly like, I'm glad that we're not getting like Leia dealing with the Senate, because we've already got the Bloodline novel. I don't need to have like a three. I mean, look, would I watch a multi-season political drama set in the Star Wars universe? Of course I would. But at the same time, I'd rather see it set in a different era and not just be like rehashing this one era over and over again. So if the lesson they learned from this movie was let's not recast our original actors, then I'm like, great, let's not recast the original actors. Yeah, look over here instead. Yeah.
Well, be careful what you wish for, because they also might just take it as an opportunity to deepfake everything.
Yeah, it's true. Which is like a lot of people's reaction to that article is that's how we get weird Luke Skywalker.
Oh yeah, that's right. So the way I feel about the eras of Star Wars and kind of rehashing the past is, I mean, I guess this kind of goes all the way back to droids, because like droids are often one of the, or at least 3PO and R2 have been like one of the through lines in the saga. And I am always I love old characters. They're like my favorite. Old characters, I think like they're like the bridges that can get us to other eras, essentially. Because I do like, I appreciate in the High Republic that Yoda exists. And like I like having, I guess it just helps. I don't think it makes me more interested in the stories, because Yoda is arguably, like, Yoda is not a super main character. I would say. Yeah,
he's actually missing for a lot of the first arc. He shows up at the end, like the very, like, but like Maz appears at one point. Yeah, I do like those connective tissues that we go like this. It's still the same universe, the same
just because it grounds me. Sort of like I was like hanging out with my mom the other day, and I was like, I used to think this. It just dawned on me. Like at once, I was like, oh my gosh. I know someone, you were alive in the 60s. And when I look at pictures of the 60s, I think that was, so I can't even comprehend how long ago that was. But then when I think, no, my mom's here with me right now in this year. So she's contemporary to me at this moment, but she also existed in this other era that when I look in pictures, it looks like a completely different world. And so like, I just had this moment of like, oh, that's like a bridge. It wasn't that long ago. Like, there's still like, people. Yeah. Anyway,
it's wild when you start thinking. Now I know we're way off topic at this point, but it's wild when you start thinking about how many grandparents in a row a certain era from far away ago was, and it's not as many grandparents as you think it would be.
Yeah.
Like, it's that generations do not go back as far as you think they will. It's only like your mom. My mom was born in the 50s, so my mom was like a teenager in the 60s. So I think about like 60s teenager stuff that's like there, and I think of like my mom's grandma was born in like 1908 or 1902 or something like that. So it's like I think about how that like her parents were born in the 80s. Like her parents were probably born like around the Civil War or earlier or whatever. It's like if you think about someone being like 80 years old, like as an average human length, like that is not that many 80-year-olds in a row to get us back to like BC times and things like that. So
yeah, it's absolutely wild. And I think like, I don't know if George Lucas was thinking about this at all when he created Yoda being so old. But I feel like that was like a golden, I feel like that was like a secret ticket or something to taking us to different eras. It's all so much.
And also for all my bluster about like, oh, I wish they would take us to more eras. I'm also, like I said, I'm such a story sucker that like, if you do a really great story set in an era that I already know a lot about, I'm still going to love it. Like in that Vanity Fair article, when I learned that Andor is also going to be a Mon Mothma story, I was like, I'm in. Like I was already excited for this series, but like, I'm like, yes, I am here for the rise of Mon Mothma. Like
absolutely.
Because I always love the section with Mon Mothma in the, I know it's like semi-canon, but in the certain point of view book where Mon Mothma has her contingency plan for if the Battle of Yavin doesn't work. And like the whole chapter is like what she's going to be having to do if this exercise, if this attack they're doing fails. Like this planet's gonna get destroyed. She's gonna be the only surviving member of the rebellion. And here's what she has to do to move forward to keep the rebellion alive. And it's just a fascinating chapter. And so now having this series that is like all about her in the Senate trying to like keep the rebellion together, it's gonna be great.
I'm really excited for Mon Mothma content. And she shows up like in the books. The books have given us more of her, and I think her parts of the Rogue One novelization are like my favorite. Her little diary entries or whatever, her transmissions and stuff. I'm here for it. So
every time I'm like, I wish they would tell more stories set 200 years in the future, or make movies out of the High Republic,
or just the A New Hope characters like Mon Mothma.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's why it's always so funny when people are. It's weird. There's two arguments that both are kind of contradictory with Star Wars fans, which is sort of like. There's the small universe argument of everyone runs into each other, and I'm like, well, yes, because you're telling epic stories about heroes in the middle of like galactic battle, and they're gonna run into each other because they're all in the same conflict. Like, yes, we're not getting stories about actual moisture farmers who are just moisture farming their entire life because they're not part of the story. But at the same time, then you also get people who are like, I don't know who these people are, I don't care about them or whatever. And like, I would be very happy. Like, that's part of what made Rebels so good for me was, like, I liked the idea of here is this other Rebel cell that is doing these things. And I remember, okay, that's where my things are contradictory, is with everyone is like, oh, I don't want a small universe. But then they're also, like, before the ultimate fate of Kanan and Ezra was revealed, people were like, well, they have to do something, because otherwise why wouldn't they be there for the events of the other movies? And I want to be like, because it's a gigantic galaxy and they're caught up in other things far, far away from what's happening right now. Like, that's where they are. Like, and they end up, obviously we know now that's not the case, but, like, same with, like, Ahsoka. Like, Ahsoka is not there for the original trilogy, but it's not because she died at the end of the prequels. It's because she was busy doing other stuff. Like,
I always think that's the silliest argument of, like, well, then why, if they existed, then why weren't they there for that? It's like, that can't be your argument.
Yeah. It's so wild. I remember people get, it's like, that they didn't exist when they wrote that script, and that's why, but it doesn't mean that that's the only possible thing that they could do. And I mean, Ahsoka is a great example of, like, Ahsoka was present during that time period, but she was also running intelligence for the we don't know what she was doing in between the end of Rebels and the Battle of Endor, but we know that she existed. We know that she had stuff she was up to. So,
yep, I'm with you. I'm with you on all of that. Okay, so Calrissian Chronicles are occurring, and at the beginning of the Calrissian Chronicles, when Lando is reciting his little story, or for the record and everything, there is no music, and the part that the music comes back in is when he realizes something is going on. And he goes, always something. And this is the start of Breakout. And of course, he finds out.
You guys are not going to believe what I'm seeing up here.
Is it a mass breakout?
L3,
You know what,
did you do?
L3?
I found my true purpose, Lando! That's what I've done! I'm so glad we took this job!
That droid.
L3, come on!
So I can't help but notice that the track that we are hearing now, or this cue, sounds very related to the Mind mission, like what came before it. And the main theme, I guess the main music for the Mind mission was sort of like its own thing, but it sounds very much also like L3's theme. So L3's theme is, I think the Mind mission is like, I don't know. I feel like it's the L3 spotlight.
Yeah, this is her, like, her heroic moment. This is her time. This is when the thing that she's been striving for essentially her entire conscious life has come to fruition.
And right when she says, "I found my true purpose," is when we hear it, and her theme is that thing. I found my true purpose, and it so happens to fit perfectly into that whole fugue, that whole invention.
Yeah, and it does. Like I said earlier, when we were talking about the first minute, when I said, like, it felt like the sound was diegetic to where she was. I feel like when the breakout begins and Lando hears it happening outside the Falcon, when it's like something's going on, and then the music comes in, it feels a little bit more muted to him because it's almost like he's hearing it from inside the Falcon instead of being out present with it. But then when it comes to her, now it gets louder again because it's so centered around her. So it just, like, plays into that feeling that I had about it.
Yeah, that is true. Like that is really interesting how that happens, because obviously it's not source music, but it really, I guess music, I guess it just shows you that, like, music, even if it's not source music, aka diegetic music, like the Cantina Band, even if it's not source music, it still is coming from a point of view. And so the way that it is mixed into the whole soundscape or whatnot, emphasized in certain rooms, but not other rooms, can kind of give us, like, subtle hints of, like, where the music is meant to be, where the party is, according to the music.
The control room.
Yeah.
L3 is throwing a party, and we're all invited. To free ourselves and get out of it.
So she is stoked. She has found herself.
Follow me, compatriots!
She's trying to go her way. Follow me.
There are a couple guards just spotted me. I don't have free hand to take
That's
them
the
out.
young
What do I
Han
do?
Solo.
You said never improvise. Akanata!
Chewie's back.
Hi!
And the music lets us know.
Yeah.
Okay, I love how just like sudden that is. Like it just so it's not like a subtle like transition. It's just my friend's back. Yay.
Yeah.
Stop
It's
everything.
a triumphant music. It's like bump. It's like a very like. It's almost a Superman. Like
It's
almost like a
didactic.
bum, 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 bum. Yeah. It's very like it's didactic, not diegetic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just pure like triumph. Like
It's almost a needle drop. Like it's that
yeah.
on the point when it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's lead up to it again because it's just so it's great.
There are a couple guards just spotted me. I don't have free hand to take them out. What do I do?
Improvise.
You said never improvise. Akanata!
Screw the mind mission.
Don't forget that
My
guy.
buddy's back.
Yeah.
This is the Han and Chewie theme.
Good to see you, buddy.
So,
True friendship.
yeah.
My Wookiee's back and there's gonna be trouble.
It basically, yeah,
Yeah.
basically, yeah. It Han is like through the music is like wearing his heart on his sleeve here, and so is Chewie really. It's like a mutually triumphant, happy reunion, and it's just so earnest. It's not like, I don't know, it's not cynical at all. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
Triumph.
And it's like a thing that's kind of there for fans as well. It's very much a fan servicey moment of, we know how epic this friendship becomes. This is the very beginning days of it, but it's like maybe like the very first moments of like that sincere friendship bonding. I'm here to help you. I'm your buddy. I've got your back always kind of vibe of Han and Chewie. Because up until now, it's been in this movie. It's been, you know, they mutually had to work together to get out of the cell. They've kind of been stuck together working on this mission because they have nothing else to do. But this is the first one where it really is like Han and Chewie, and I have your back, and I'm here to help you. And it's like the beginning of this glorious like friendship.
Totally. And earlier in the set of minutes when Chewie is leaving, we hear the gang theme, which is what is it? It's that's right. And it's when Chewie is leaving the gang. And the thing is, like, Chewie is part of the gang at first. You know, they're all kind of part of the gang, but also Han and Chewie have their own just for them. That's not the gang theme. It's just Han and Chewie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's great that
Han and Chewie are a gang within a gang.
Exactly. Well, and then pretty soon, well, they're going to be the only ones left in the gang anyway. So
Yeah.
So yeah, we start and end with Chewie leaving and coming back, all within the course of 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Yeah. And it, like you said, it kind of escalates their friendship, or like it is the first moment where we really see like that actually, even when they're not forced to be together, they're going to choose each other. And
a little bit of retconning with Solo in that they kind of really downplayed the idea of the life debt being why Chewie and Han were together for so long, because that was always kind of like the original continuity. And I think it's better. I think it's better that these two just have a genuine like love and appreciation for each other, and it's not like just some cultural sense of obligation that keeps them around. I think that I like it so much more that this is just like, hey, I genuinely like this person, and I want to be around them, and I want to like support, and like they have my back, I have their back, and it's a lot. I think it's a lot more honest and real.
I agree. I also like that sort of retcon. It reminds me of Boba and Fennec as well, when they show that she is also choosing to still hang out with Boba. It's not just that he saved her. So
he even gives her like the ability
choice.
like to go, and she chooses to stay, and like she feels like she senses like, hey, I could, if I left, I'm just gonna get back into like my old ways, but like with him I could actually like have a chance at doing something with myself, and I respect that about him. So
right. Yeah. So one other thing, okay, this is a note that I wrote from Star Wars, from one of your episodes on Star Wars Minute, but you already pretty much said it. You said that L3 is so focused on her revolutionary ideas, but her actual revolution she begins as just an afterthought from getting the droid to leave her alone, which is so funny. Great.
And I'm glad that you gave me the 5 minutes where she has her revolution, but you left, like, luckily her fate is cut off of these 5 minutes, so I get to live in this little joyful little L3 pocket that the movie let me have for a moment and took away from me brutally.
This is the perfect L3 pocket. It really is. Yeah.
It is the exact beginning and culmination of her life's work, and then you get to leave and go. It's like when someone stops Old Yeller before the very last scene. You're like, I get that, this kid and his dog, it's great. Like, it's like that kind of thing. Yeah, I've
never seen Old Yeller. Is that the dog thing?
Yeah, it's just like one of those like movies where it's like,
now I know the dog's gonna die.
Yeah, sorry. That's like knowing Titanic sinks. Like, Old Yeller's like famously a sad kid kills his dog story, but like
what?
Spoiler alert for the rest of the audience. Sorry, you may have to drop that in for them. So I think he gets like rabies or something, and the kid has to shoot the dog, and like that's like the end of the movie. It's like,
isn't that also what happens in Their Eyes Were Watching God?
I think that's like a pretty like
common.
It's one of those like sad like things. So like it was a running gag for a long time back when like Old Yeller was still a movie that kids would have to watch and be depressed by. Is like sometimes parents would stop the movie before that scene, so they were like that was I think it was a joke on Friends that like someone didn't know how Old Yeller ended because they never saw the ending of it, and so they thought it was just like a happy-go-lucky movie about a kid and his dog, and didn't know that it has this horrifically tragic and traumatic ending.
Oh my gosh. I thought it was going to be like a Free Willy situation or something.
Yeah.
No. Wow.
No, it's an L3 situation.
Well then.
Yeah. I did not. I feel bad. I feel like
no, don't
I feel
feel
like
bad. I probably was not going to watch it anyway.
No, what I feel like I just did though was I was like, oh, I'm so glad that I didn't get the really sad ending to this moment, and then I made it happen instead. I feel like I just Twilight Zoned myself into creating the tragic, sad ending to this podcast.
At least it wasn't like that other thing, which I'll explain now.
Yeah, at least it wasn't like that really depressing situation. Let me explain to you what happened. Oh my gosh.
So I actually have a listener question from Alex on Discord for this episode. So for you and me, do droids listen to music? And when they listen to music, what do they think of it? So I mean, you can take that as a silly question, or I'll think canonically, like what. Like I think we've seen droids like kind of grooving to music. I feel like we've seen that.
Yeah, I was actually trying to think of how many times in Star Wars I've seen even human characters listen to music, and the only two examples I could think of were, well, not a human, but I could think of like Thrawn listening to music, like as part of his like speeches about art and stuff like that, and then also the opera scene with Anakin and Palpatine,
and also opera in Queen's Hope.
Right,
I don't know, with one of the handmaidens.
I'm trying to think of what. I know that when they made the like Star Wars playlists on Spotify, I think they gave droids some music, but I think R2 probably definitely listens to some music. I think that I don't know what 3PO does. I think 3PO might not listen to music, but I think L3 does. I think L3 has.
Well, I guess it depends on if we're talking about, like, do they actively choose to put on music, or are they in the room when music is being played and then they react to it?
Yeah.
So
and that's the thing we don't always see anybody doing in these stories. Like we never. It's not like in the Abrams Star Trek where like they actively put on Beastie Boys and like rock out to it. Like it's not like people are like, oh yeah, let me listen to that. What's the band from Tatooine Rhapsody? Like no one's like, let's
Star
pop
Waver.
on this. Yeah, let's not put on some Star Waver. Like you never see Luke.
although
like,
Hit It Max.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I guess now that I think about it, yeah, you're like, yeah, there are definitely scenes people listen to music. It's literally one of the most famous scenes in Star Wars, and in Return of the Jedi, one of the most controversial scenes in the remake of the reboot.
Oh yeah, that's a
remastered Return of the Jedi. So what's wrong with me?
There's a whole performance.
Yeah, there's a whole performance that then was recut and made people angry. So I guess they do
Zeb in Rebels, but I can't remember if Chopper was there though.
Yeah,
Because Zeb is like putting on his like, I don't know, his rock.
I wonder if the droids listen to music, but no one else can hear it because it's inside their like system. Like it's not a speaker. It's
like they can play it to themselves.
Like it's like having on like headphones that nobody else, because you are already have your internal thing. Because I definitely feel like R2. I feel like would put music on while he worked or like did stuff or like was like focusing on things. I think L3 as well. That's why I said like it feels like L3 is conducting music. Like L3 feels like someone who would put on intense music while she was doing stuff. Whereas I think 3PO, I don't think he would. I think he would think it was too pedestrian or too like beneath him. Like it would like that's not part of his programming, and it's like why would he do something so frivolous and silly? So
I think programmers, humans, or people, would have had to program their droid to have the capability of playing music, and I bet some of them would choose to. So like, oh, I want my droid to be able to play me music or something.
Yeah.
Whether to
like having a smartphone, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like L3 of all the characters might be one who would program herself that functionality to be able to have music for herself, just for herself.
Yeah, I feel like at one point, whenever she was like rebuilding her entire body, she had to have put speakers in at some point. That just feels like a thing that she would have done.
And she would just put in a massive library or a massive infrastructure for taking in, I don't know. She has a streaming service right here. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Lando's like, I don't want to erase her brain because I don't want to lose her star charts, and also her.
Yeah, she's
my entire iTunes library is backed up on her brain. It's like I don't want to pay for the cloud service, so I really have to make sure I keep up.
Oh my gosh! Well, now the Millennium Falcon has like a stereo system that has all of L3's music on
It's like at the end of Guardians 2 when they get that Zoom that has like a whole bunch of, like they go from having only the one cassette tape each time to having a whole Zoom library to put on.
Oh my gosh. So this another part of the question was, are Star Wars droids capable of music composition, or are there any canonical droid musician players, not composers but players? And I've been racking my brain. The only one I can think of is DJ Rex as a DJ, and I don't. So,
and DJ Rex is also supposed to be a bad DJ, so like that's. Like, he's supposed to be as bad of a DJ as he was a pilot, so...
Oh, okay. So...
Yeah. At least that's what, like, the Imagineer said when she was talking about the, like, development of Galaxy's Edge. She was like, he's not a very good pilot. And then she pauses and goes, he's also not a very good DJ. So, I mean, I think they're probably... I bet you they're... I'm trying to think of if in... Like, in the Pleasure Palace in Boba Fett, if there were droids that were playing music... I'm trying to think of if Max Repo's band had any droids in it.
I know in Legends
like
there's a musician droid.
Yeah,
but that's Legends.
Or like were there music droids playing on Dryden Voss's bar or yacht? Was there? I'm trying to think of any examples off the top of my head. I'm sure someone's like gonna respond to this like, of course there were. I have like 3 different examples of it. But
I like that there's not that. I like that I don't have any top of mind examples because I think I have very strong thoughts about droids in Star Wars, just period. And I don't think like musicians this is going to sound really bad, but I'm going to try to explain. I don't think musicianship should just be doled out to anyone in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I think, and it's not because I don't want droids could never play music and can do that, but like, I think there is something that is fundamentally different about like if a droid were to play music versus a confirmed like sentient whatever, a human or something like that. And that's not a bad thing. I think like I would be interested in exploring like what it would take to get a droid, like what about it might be better or worse or different or just like, yeah, I so that I don't have any like deeper thoughts about it at the moment, but just I like that there's not just random examples because sometimes I feel like it's easy to just be like, you know what, there aren't, so let me just write one in. And like it is something that I would want to actually be mindful about. Why, if we're doing it, why and how.
I feel like even if we had a shot of a droid playing music, that's not necessarily the same as a droid composing music. And I feel like there is something about how I think that in modern Star Wars productions, especially, the concept of droid autonomy has become a much more gray area. And I think that L3 especially has been like a big contribution to that. Like this movie especially makes it feel like droids are sentient like beings that are being subjugated in some ways. And I feel like other Star Wars does not present it as much in that way. And droids really are just like very anthropomorphized, but they're still computers. They're still just running algorithms or whatever. And so I think that in most Star Wars, I think that a droid would probably be able to recreate a piece of music with perfect technical accuracy, but then it might not have those like same creative flourishes that a sentient like musician would have. And that's where like maybe the difference could be between them. And I feel like maybe like if you had a droid who was like fully creative and able to like compose music, then you might starting to get into, oh, these are really creatures that have like free will and autonomy that we are like completely enslaving, and that might be like a little bit of a rough like pill to swallow for all the characters that like that's an actual thing that I wrestle with even like as a fan of Star Wars now, is like, what are they going to do about droids at some point? Because there's a certain point where it's like all these heroes that we follow have droids that are like their property.
Okay, so I almost feel the opposite. So, okay, so first of all, composing droid composers and droid performers, I feel like, Alex, I know if you're listening, I know that you asked, are there any musician players, not composers? And I think that he was insinuating or that composers would be easier to find, like it, and I kind of think that I almost think that too, because like there's already like composing programs, like whatever, they're so common now. It's like not even, you could it's generative, like it's all generative stuff. It's almost not, it's, I don't want to say it's not hard, but like it is almost in a way easier if you at least program like AI with certain rules, or you train it on a certain body of a composer's work. Like if you've ever heard
AI create works of art, like physical works of art,
exactly.
Like people can create photos and paintings, but at the same time you also can play loops on a software that you can change the instruments out or whatever. As long as the notes are programmed in, it can still play that music.
Right.
And that's what I was thinking a droid playing music would be like.
Right. So then there's different types of like playing, because even if we go back to like, I don't know, this has been going on for decades. Like there are some pianos where like, I don't know, the first time I saw this as a kid, like looking at a piano where like the keys were just going down by itself. Like there are self-playing, there are like there are pianos that play themselves or whatever, they're programmed to do that. And so just pressing the right notes is like one way that one could play music. But then you think of like other things, like what a droid singer, like, and you think of like all the unique aspects of producing a vocal tone and like all the variations and like ways that you access that instrument in a way that's not just pressing the right thing. And like it's the same thing. It's like similar with violin, is like there's so much variety. Even really good software instruments can't it's so hard to recreate like the sound of certain instruments and the flexibility, fluidity of certain instruments.
I think that might be what I was trying to get at when I said, like, I think that a droid playing music would do it with perfect technical accuracy, but I think, like, there might be, like, a little bit of soul lost to it in the performance. Like, that's like when you mentioned singers, like, I think that I feel like a droid playing a piece of music is going to play it exactly the same way every single time you hear it. Whereas I feel like a living character in Star Wars playing music, it's never going to be exactly the same way twice, no matter how skilled they are and how crafted they are. There's always going to be something in that moment that makes them play this one note a little faster. They'll linger a little bit longer. And this is me as a non-musical person talking, so obviously, like, you know this better than I do. But, like, I think that, like you mentioned about the violin, like, I do think, like, there's going to be, like, subtle things that are different in every single performance. Whereas I think a droid will always play the music the exact same way each time.
It's really an interesting thing to ponder. And I mean, it is just a real world thing that I ponder all the time when it comes to AI making art, because I think technically speaking, AI does a very, depending on the tool, can do a very serviceable job at doing the thing. And so if we're talking about product, and if people are interested in music, the product, art, the product, and they just literally want a painting that looks like it is a painting, and that's fine. Like, you want music that sounds like it is in the style of Bach, tons of AI that can do that. But it kind of emphasizes, for me at least, like that, maybe it's not just about the product. Maybe it's something about like the artist being human, like being able to fail and have fears about how it'll be perceived, and be insecure about this one part and mess up in this part, and like something about the lens of like a real person is almost more like the story is like almost more, not even the story, because that makes me think of like, publicists being like, this is the artist's story and they started from here and they ended up here, and like not even that, just the fact that something was done. Like, I think I'd be more impressed to see like a human do something at 90% than to watch a computer execute that 100% every time. Like, I want to see the person like they might fail or something, I
feel like a droid playing music in Star Wars is kind of like the sci-fi version of a drum machine. Like, it's basically it's like a thing that you would have in your band if you didn't have that member and you couldn't find anyone skilled enough to play that instrument, but you needed that sound as part of your track. Like, you would have that, but it wouldn't necessarily it wouldn't feel as like real or as like intimate as having an actual person there playing it would.
And sometimes that does the job. Like, if you're a singer, you just need to play a show. You just have your karaoke backing track. You just put it on, but you are still there, and you can mix it. Yeah, I can see droids also in that position. I can see droids like in a, Anyway, that would be interesting to see. I mean, it's a good question, so thanks for asking it. And I'm glad we didn't have a clear answer. The last thing I'm gonna say that is not related to these minutes, but is related to droids and music is. There is a project called Beethoven 10, Beethoven X, it looks like. So Beethoven wrote 9 symphonies when he was alive, and last year AI wrote Beethoven's 10th.
Wow.
So I would be So listeners, I invite you to listen to it and form your own thoughts on how you think this Beethoven's 10th symphony, as written by AI, how it sounds. And I'm also going to post in the show notes a link to this review of Beethoven's 10th. And I think listeners might find the review interesting.
Was the review also written by AI?
No.
That would be great.
The review is written by a Beethoven scholar.
Okay.
And it's very interesting to read it. It kind of touches upon a lot of topics that we talked about today in this episode, but like with more craft and passion than I am right now, just trying to like gather all my thoughts about AI and bots and yeah. very interesting to hear from a Beethoven like scholar's perspective on Beethoven 10th and like what they thought of it.
Interesting.
So yeah, put that on your to listen list. So before we wrap up, I'm going to tell you the themes and where we are in the soundtrack. So the themes from these minutes are L337, Young Han Solo, the heroic version, The Gang, and Han and Chewie. In the soundtrack, we are on Mind Mission and Breakout on the regular version of the soundtrack. And if you have the deluxe version of the soundtrack, this is just called Super Deluxe Mind Mission or Extra Deluxe Mind Mission. And that's where we are on the soundtrack. You, Riley, have already answered the Star Wars Music Minute questionnaire. But I'm going to read your answers back to you and you can add to them if you would like.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So question number 1 for that is, in exactly 3 words, what does Star Wars sound like? Do you want to conjure a new answer, or do you want me to read your previous answer? It won't negate your old answer. It just
what was my
one.
old answer?
Epic Space Magic.
That's almost exactly what I just said out loud. I almost said Epic Space Magic again.
Oh my gosh.
So that's wild. Like
that is...
I almost wish that I had said it and then you had I think
so
that I still
funny.
yeah. I think that kind of goes into what I said earlier about the Force working through. I wish that I had said it because I really did. I almost said Epic Space Magic.
I believe
and
you.
I asked you what I said because I think I almost said Epic Space Wizards, and then I was like, well, it's not just wizards, but it's wizard in the sense of wizard being a slang term for cool.
Totally. Which Reith Silas came up with. So question number 2 is, what's something related to Star Wars music or sound that you're curious about and want to learn more about?
I think we talked about this a lot last time. We talked about like the process of like how someone takes a scene that is not scored and like really kind of like brings together. So I feel like that was a pretty good discussion. So I think anything we had now would just be a rehashing of that same thing. I'm trying to think of anything that I have thought of now. I'm trying to think of anything that like has come up since then or curiosities of mine. I'd like to know just how like just how many different screams are there? Like that was one thing that would be fun to think about. Like, because like I know like there's a few different types of ones, and yeah.
Like you mean like the Willem scream and others?
Yeah, there's at least a handful of them. So I didn't realize how many of them there were until recently. The Dungeons and Daddies podcast did a like jokey run of them, and the editor put a bunch of them in a row, and I was like, oh wow, there's a lot of those.
Oh, from Star Wars?
Some were Star Wars, and some were other similar like types of like motifs that may have also been in Star Wars at some points. But
oh, interesting. What's that podcast called?
Dungeons and Daddies. It's a D&D podcast.
Okay, Dungeons and Daddies. That's okay.
I don't remember which episode it was, so that's a lot to tell you to go through to get to this one thing that's like 80, 90 episodes deep into the show. But yeah.
Cool. Yeah, last time you said similar to how writers start with a blank page and somehow, conjure words to convey scenes, like what is the musical and sound version of like starting from scratch like that? And I thought that was a cool way to phrase that. That question, that curiosity. So the last question is, and you can just add another one. What is a score or soundtrack that you're fond of besides anything Star Wars?
What did I say last time?
You said Doctor Who.
Yeah, that makes sense. That seems about right. This makes me mad because I was just thinking about something recently that I was really, really into, that I was loving, and now I can't remember what it was. Like, I know we talked a lot last time about the overall like Disneyland music choices and things like that happen. I hate how cheesy this is as a response to that because it's so connected, but I do think a lot about the Marvel movies and the way that the different heroes have their own themes, and the way that there's that Avengers motif that plays a lot. And if you go to Avengers Campus, you hear it like every 10 minutes, and it's like that.
Oh, I've never been to Avengers Campus.
Yeah, that's not at all what it sounds like, and I just butchered it. But that's one. And I think actually, you know what? I'll even say the thing that I said earlier about Gentleman Jack. Like now that I've talked myself into understanding why it raises the stakes in a way that I wasn't thinking about before, I'm actually like digging it a lot more. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So
Gentleman Jack.
Yeah, Gentleman Jack's a really good one. It's a lot of like really like aggressive like string music, and I love it.
That sounds like something I want to check out.
Yeah, it's a great show. It's just like, but yeah, I think that like the music really does intensify things. And a lot of times it's just a lady walking across Halifax, but you would think that she was going to battle every time she's doing it.
Oh my gosh,
so.
I'm really curious now.
Yeah.
Do you know the composer on that?
I don't. I'll look it up right now because I've mentioned them several times, so I should give them credit. Let me see here.
And did you want to mention a specific Marvel soundtrack, or?
I mean, I just saw Doctor Strange. That's the one that's like the most in my head right now. Let me see here. So for
never heard of this show, but I don't have HBO.
It's a British show. It's on HBO. I think it's a BBC HBO joint effort, but it's based on a real life woman named Anne Lister, who was like this like very like pretty prolific lesbian in the early 1800s, and she had this secret diary that was all written in code, and then they like cracked her code and like translated her diary, and she just had all these just like rampant affairs, and then she like ended up like essentially marrying a woman. Oh, you know what's hilarious? Series music by Murray Gold, who is the composer for Doctor Who that I was talking about.
Gosh.
So apparently I just love Murray Gold's music. And now that I know that Murray Gold did this, it makes so much sense. But that's hilarious that Murray Gold is the composer.
Oh, wow.
That makes me laugh. That is so funny. Series music by Murray Gold. That's hysterical. And then let me go ahead and give the props to who did the music for Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness, because there was some fun stuff there.
Wasn't it Giacchino?
I think it might have been, which also is hilarious because I love the Rogue One soundtrack. So I just don't have a lot of like wild differently. I like what I like. Well, I think I talked last time about what happened with me with Giacchino with Spotify in 2021.
Oh, yeah,
in 2020, it was like, you love Michael Giacchino. You just love his stuff. The same thing happened this year with John Williams, because I was listening to so much John Williams for my book that, oh no, it's Danny Elfman, which makes, yeah, of course it was Danny Elfman. I knew that already. I don't know why I thought it was, yeah.
Oh, Doctor Strange. Oh, because it's, okay.
Sam Raimi.
Doctor Strange 1 was Giacchino. Oh, okay, yeah. Doctor Strange.
Yeah, sorry,
we're
Doctor
on the
Strange,
second one now.
Yeah, because there was a solo like replacement of directors, although I think it happened way earlier in production, because I think Michael Waldron basically rewrote the entire script after the other director left. But yeah, Danny Elfman.
Funny.
I mean,
no one else has mentioned Murray Gold, and you've mentioned Murray Gold twice.
Yeah, and I didn't even mean to when I did it the second time. So yeah, great. Murray Gold was Elfman. He did 10 seasons of Doctor Who. So it being my favorite show, it definitely feels like it makes a lot of sense that Murray Gold's music is like deep in the heart of me at this point.
Totally.
Yeah. There's also a really great YouTube video that is an evolution of all the different Star Trek themes, and it's like a woman with let me see if I can find who it is, and then people can look it up. But
cool.
It's a woman playing it all on violin.
Oh.
And she goes through each of them. And there's a little bit of a backing track, but let me see here. Every Star Trek theme. And I think it's out of date now because it was recorded before Strange New Worlds existed.
So I have never seen anything Star Trek, but at all. But the more I, apparently there's a lot of it. There's a lot of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of Star Trek. Yeah. I did a like math at one point. I like added up how many episodes of Star Trek there were and how many there were of Doctor Who. And I think when I did it, Doctor Who had more, because Doctor Who was a weekly series that went on for like almost 30 years before it got canceled.
Weekly.
But I think Star Trek was like close to overtaking it, and the reason why is because there are so many more Star Trek shows than there are Doctor Who. Because Doctor Who only has one modern series now, and a couple of spin-offs, but Star Trek has had multiples. Like at one point in the 90s, there were 3 shows going at one time, then it was another show, and now we're back to there are 5 different Star Trek shows. So I think when you added up all these new shows, I think at the time I was like, right now Doctor Who has it, but next year that won't be the case anymore. So this is a YouTuber by the name of Vio Dance, so VIODANCE, and she has a video that's evolution of Star Trek music 1966 to 2020. So I don't think it has lower decks. So I think it goes through all the shows. And the only one that she's a little bit of a cheater on is there's a pretty controversially disliked theme for the series Enterprise, because it's like essentially a pop song, and instead of being like a composed theme song, it has like lyrics, and it's really weird and off-putting. And so instead of using it's called Faith of the Heart. Instead of using Faith of the Heart, she used the closing credits theme instead. So it's a little bit more of like a composed, like has that more classical vibe to it. But
that's funny. I'll put a link into I'll throw a link in the show notes since it came up. That's
the fact that it was Murray
interesting.
Gold makes me laugh so hard. I can't believe it. It's the same composer that I mentioned last time I was on the show.
Now you should probably check out more Murray Gold stuff.
I want to see what else he's done. I want to see what else he's done work on now that I have him.
It's probably a lot.
Is there anything big that he's done that I can be like?
So
watch it be like everything. Like watch it be like 6 Marvel movies and like Doctor Who, Murray Gold. A lot of British stuff.
Okay.
Obviously, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Since I have never heard of Murray Gold until Riley, listeners, if any of you are fans of Murray Gold or know of Murray Gold's work, let me know. I'm curious how many of you are out there.
It appears that he worked a lot with Russell T Davies, who was the showrunner who brought Doctor Who back in 2005. Because it appears that he did the music for Queer as Folk in the UK, which Russell did. And then it also looks like he did like a lot of all the Doctor Who shows that were on for a little while. And he also did Russell's other previous show, It's a Sin, which is still currently on, I believe. But it's like a miniseries he did. So
prolific in the TV, at least in TV land. I find TV composition so interesting. Riley has a book. So
do have a book.
Where can everyone buy that pre-order, I think, at this point? Or is it? No, it's just pre-order still.
It's coming out in August, and you can get it at all your favorite bookstores. So it's a pretty wide release book. Obviously, it's available on your Amazons and your Barnes and Nobles, and it's through Inside Editions, which is I believe it's a subsidiary of Simon and Schuster. So I don't know if it's on Insight's site yet. It wasn't when it first got announced, but it was on Simon & Schuster's site. But you can actually go to your family local bookstore and you can pre-order it there, which is, I like supporting independent bookstores. So that's a great resource as well. Comes out August 30th, so you have a little bit of time, but pre-orders do very, very much help. And maybe keep an eye out for other things that have my name on them at some point in the near future as well. So, but that's the big one right now. So, and this is not going to go up before Celebration, right?
No.
Okay, then never mind. I was at Celebration.
You were at Celebration, as was I. But wait, okay. Well, I'll ask you after this. This, I will say, exploring. If you haven't at least looked up Exploring Tatooine, it's really like the cover is really beautiful. The artwork is so beautiful.
Yeah, I love the artwork because I obviously I wrote the book before I got to see any of the artwork. I saw samples of what they had done in other books because I was given like other franchises books of the same kind of book to like use as a reference for writing this one. But the very first time that I got pictures of the art from this book, it was a picture of the cover, which is Luke Skywalker with R2 on the Lars homestead, and my name is right next to Luke's foot, and I lost it a little bit. It was kind of a nice thing. And I think since I was on the show last time too, I got my Tatooine tattoo. I got the hang on, sorry, I'm having a hard time with reflections. Hang on, I'm gonna go this way. Yes. So it's the Jedi symbol and the Rebel symbol, and the Rebel symbol is the red sun, and so it's supposed to when it's in order, it's supposed to be the twin suns.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's
and I got
awesome.
it. I got it before the book was announced, and I was like, Tatooine matters to me, but I can't say why. Yeah.
Luckily, there are lots of excuses you can think of to say why Tatooine matters to you in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I'll put all of the links to various places to pre-order this book. I do like the suggestion to go to find a local bookstore and do it there.
I'll make it easier on you for links. If you go to RileySilverman.com, there's a link for books there. So you can just do that because there is a website called even if you don't, like, if you're not feeling good about going into public yet still, which I think a lot of people reasonably have reasons for that, if you go to my book, so it's rileysilverman.com/books.
I see.
There's a pre-order. There's a website called
perfect.
Bookshop. And bookshop.org actually works with independent bookstores. And so you can actually like pick the store that is your local shop, and then you can buy the book, and then the money will it counts as a sale for that bookstore.
Oh, that's cool. I just moved, so I don't know the local bookstores around me. So that's a good resource for me.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't think every bookstore participates, but anyone who does is in there. So like, I think with LA, I think the last bookstore was listed on there at one point.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They're cool. Well, where else can people find you, Riley?
You can find me on Twitter at Riley J. Silverman. You can find me on Instagram at Riley Silverman. I will be in the upcoming season. I don't know when it's going to air, but actually on Dropout on College Humor, and I'm very excited about that.
Oh, wow. So, congratulations. Yeah. That's really cool.
And I may have embarrassed myself on a Star Wars question, but that's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We know you.
I'll talk to you about it off mic, because I think you will appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, listeners, thank you so much for for sticking out this droid rebellion with us. I think we're liberating a lot of droids and Wookiees, changing some lives here. This has been minutes 76 through 80. Next week we'll be talking about a Star Wars story, minutes 81 through 85. And you know what to do if you like the show. Feel free to do all the things that all the links are going to be for in the show notes. I'm on all social media at Star Wars Music Minute or Star Wars Museman, and can't wait to hear all of your thoughts. May the Force be with you. Insert twinkly music, and thanks for listening to Star Wars Music Minute.